All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to February Shredder Adventure Series. We had a really fun, packed January set of talks with some really incredible women and adventurers and athletes. And now we've moved into February with another list of wonderful women to speak to. And our guest today reminded me that today is International Women in Sports Day, which is hugely relevant and exciting for us, of course. And I think that, you know, we are all here and in conversation with other incredible women and other girls on this call to enhance those conversations and get excited about getting more women and girls into sports and to be excited about sports and in all sports. Yes, we're a mountain bike club, but we of course are always encouraging you girls to do as many different sports as you can at this age in your lives and be exposed to as many different activities as possible at this stage in your lives. So happy International Women in Sports Day, everyone. So a little bit of Zoom admin. I'll be in the chat room as always on the side, so you're welcome to send me a message and I can either ask Aaren the question during the call, or I can ask you to ask the question at a certain point in the call. And I can also see all of your screens, those that are sharing a video, so I can see whether your hand is raised or not. Aaren has a little bit of a presentation today, so at certain points during her presentation, she may stop and ask if anybody has questions. But if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and if I see you, I'll go ahead and call on you. And then we'll also have plenty of time for questions after she finishes sharing her presentation. So we're super excited to have you here today, Aaren. Aaren Harris is here to speak with us. And she is one of the first 20 women in the world to hike what's called the Triple Crown. And I had not heard of the Triple Crown before meeting Aaren. So this was, I guess, isn't there a Triple Crown for horse racing? I think I had heard of, but not for hiking. So girls, the Triple Crown is the set of hikes that includes the entire length of the Appalachian Trail, the entire length of the Pacific Crest Trail, and the entire length of the Continental Divide Trail. And that totals over 8,000 miles of hiking across 22 states in this country. So she's going to show us some maps and things so you specifically know where these hikes are. But that's just an incredible number. Considering on a normal Shredder's mountain bike evening, we probably cover between 2 to 5 miles of trail. She was covering over 8,000 miles. She began her hiking career around age 10, so the age of some of you, in the Adirondack High Peaks with her father, and then continued to pursue her goal of backpacking America's wilds on foot from age 24 to 30. Since then, she's been an organic veggie farmer and an early childhood teacher, but has still had time to pursue hiking shorter length trails. She's finished the Long Trail of Vermont, which is another big trail, 300 miles of the Arizona Trail, the Northville Placid Trail, is an Adirondack 46er with one round of summer and one round of winter 46 under her belt, and has currently paddled 350 miles of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail with her husband and 6-year-old son, Rue. To combine her love of farming and the forest, she's founding an outdoor preschool on her farm in Greenfield, right down the street, called Little Wings Farm and Forest School, which will hopefully open in the fall of 2021. So Aaren, we're super excited to have you here on the call today to have this conversation with you. And if you wouldn't mind just starting out doing a little bit more of an introduction of yourself and giving us an explanation of what the Triple Crown's all about.
Sure. Super glad to be here. Thanks for having me. And hello to all the shredders and all the shredder friends and people that I might know from my little circle. I've been meaning to do a presentation like this probably for since I came back, probably from the CDT in 2007. And I never put it together. So this has just been a good time during the pandemic for me to put some photos and some information together and make a little presentation that I could give and try to share my love of backpacking with, the next generation. So I started in the Adirondacks with my dad. My dad was always leaving in the middle of the night. That's all I knew is I would see big piles of gear and duffel bags. And then my dad would be gone in the morning and he would be out hiking in the high peaks, at dawn. And he eventually started taking me and I fell in love and I just absolutely loved it. And I know now that I have covered the amount of miles I have in the places that I've been, that hiking in the Adirondacks is probably the most challenging. The Adirondacks, the White Mountains in southern Maine, probably the most challenging hiking that you could possibly do. So if you grow up in this state and you spend any time in the Adirondacks, I can really say that you could probably hike anywhere, pretty much anywhere. It trains your muscles and it trains your mind to think it's okay to be wet and cold, and it's okay to be climbing up boulders and to be dangling from roots and stuff like that. So some of the hiking seemed a little bit more tame when I actually went out west. I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. It's like a little dirt path. Nothing like that, nothing like the Adirondacks were. But I have I just absolutely loved every sport growing up. I couldn't get enough of it. And the only award I got in high school was the gym award. I got the gym award. So I remember being like, ooh, that's great. I can play gym. But then going forward in my life, I just realized there's really not a sport I don't want to try, and there's not a sport I don't want to do. And some people don't think of hiking as a sport, but I kind of do. So that's my question to pose for this talk. Do you think hiking is a sport? I'm not racing anyone. I'm not racing, or I'm not competing in any way, but I'm competing with myself in a way to see if I can achieve a goal. So that's my question of the talk. And then I guess, should I go on to my slides?
Yeah, and further, that's a great question to ask, because I think it's very relevant for mountain biking too, because so many adults and kids ride mountain bikes just for the fun of it, to be out in the woods, just as I assume that's the reason why you like to be hiking, is to be out in the woods and enjoying your surroundings. And it's not necessarily for a race. And that's why our group is really just about getting girls on bikes, not at all geared towards racing at all. And so I think some of you girls think about that as well for mountain biking, right? Do you consider that? I mean, I would consider it a sport, but I think that it's true. Like, it's same with hiking. You're outside enjoying the outdoors, even though there's not competition. Is it still considered a sport? That's a great question. So yeah, go ahead and share those slides. That would be great.
All right. I learned about the Appalachian Trail when I was young. I was traveling to, I believe it would be like somewhere on Cape Cod with my family. And I came across the overpass on I-90 near Lee, Massachusetts, and it said Appalachian Trail on the sign over the highway. And I said, Daddy, what is that? And he said, that is the trail that goes from Georgia. I don't know if you can see my cursor, Georgia, all the way to Maine. And I said, I think I'm going to hike that someday. And I sure enough did. So you can see here the map of the 3 trails and where they are in America. The Appalachian Trail is over here on the East Coast. The Continental Divide Trail is through the Rocky Mountains in the middle. And then the Pacific Crest Trail is over here on the West Coast. And it's not the Pacific Coast Trail. There's one of those too. So the total mileage is up in the air, somewhere near 8,000 miles. Because the Continental Divide Trail is not really a trail, but is more of a route, everyone can choose their own trail and choose their own route. So the mileage is different for each person on that trail. The Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail are pretty well established now. And so currently there are about 482 recognized Triple Crowners. And when I look back into the records, I see that I'm probably in the first 20 women to do all 3. These are some of the trail markers that you'll see along the way. These are the logos of each trail. And sometimes you'll see them like that. And sometimes the trail logos look a little different. Sometimes they're carved into wood. Sometimes they're not made of plastic. Sometimes they are a little bit more unique, depending on where you are. I started the Appalachian Trail right out of college. I had taught a couple years at a school for emotionally disturbed kids in Charlton, New York. And they did a lot of experiential education, and it was really eye-opening to me. Just really spent a lot of time outside, and I wanted to be outside more. And I had a couple friends from Union College, which is where I went to college, and they were leaving to hike the Appalachian Trail. And I said, well, I can't leave my job. I need to stay with my kids until I'm ready to leave in June at the end of the school year. But wherever you are, I'll meet you. So I did what I call an Oreo hike. I started in the middle. I started here, somewhere around here in Virginia, near Waynesboro, Virginia. And I hiked with these two friends until I ran out of money. And I got to somewhere about here, somewhere almost in Massachusetts area, lower or the southern part of Massachusetts. And I knew that I needed to return. So I went back to work and worked for another year or two. And then a different friend of mine from college named T-Bird, that was her trail name, decided that she would like to hike the whole trail. So I started down in Georgia at Springer Mountain with her and hiked up to the spot that I had already started at in Virginia because I was running low on money again. And so at that time, I had to make a decision. If I wanted to make it all the way to Mount Katahdin in Maine, I really needed to either hike a lot faster, not spend as much money, or figure a new way out. And so I decided that I was going to leave her when I got to the spot that I had already started in Virginia. And I jumped up to Lee, Massachusetts and hiked the last 780 miles to Mount Katahdin alone. And I really did fall in love with backpacking at this time. And during my time alone was when I decided that I wanted to see how strong I could be, how fast I could go, how far I could go. I could stop when I wanted to. I could start when I wanted to. I could take a break for as long as I wanted to. I didn't have anyone else to think of, worry about, or wait for, or catch up to. I didn't feel pressured to go faster or slower. I really enjoyed hiking by myself. And to this day, I still do. The Appalachian Trail is 2,190 miles. And as I said, it's Springer Mountain in Georgia to Mount Katahdin in Maine through 14 states. It usually takes between 5 and 7 months to hike. And most people start around 10 miles a day and they go up to anywhere between 18 to 20 to 25 miles per day on the easiest stretches. Most of the time, when you get up into the Northeast, you can maybe hang out in the 15 to 20 miles per day section, but this is every day, like a job almost. You wake up in the morning and you eat and sleep and walk and eat and sleep and walk. And that's about it. The highest mountain on the Appalachian Trail is 6,643 feet in the Smoky Mountains. And right now, when I see the numbers, they're similar to when I hiked. So I hiked in 2001 and 2003, and around that time about 3,000 people tried it every year, and about 300 or 400 finished, 500 finished, and now it looks like pretty similar, except maybe 4,000 total. Some go northbound and some go southbound, and it's a decent finishing rate. People are pretty well prepared for it. The first through hike was a man named Earl Schaefer. The trail was sort of thought up by a forester named Benton Mackay in 1921, and it took a while for it to be built. And Earl Schaefer was the first documented person to do the whole thing, but my very favorite first was the first woman to hike the Appalachian Trail. She was called Grandma Gatewood, and she did it 3 times. And the last time she did it, she was 75. And she always hiked in Keds sneakers, and she never wore a backpack. She always had a blanket full of gear over her shoulder, like thrown over her shoulder like a hobo. She was pretty cool. The AT is very old, super old mountains, 480 million years old. They were once as tall as the Alps and the Rockies, but they kind of got ground down over time by wind and water. The terrain is super steep and brutal. It's very hard hiking, a lot of climbing, a lot of rocks, a lot of roots, very scrambly. And there are quite a few people on the trail and a lot of road crossings and a lot of trailheads and places to get on and off the trail, which is not so out west on the PCT or the CDT. A lot of people say that the AT is like a green tunnel because you're walking through a lot of dense forest, deciduous forest, but I found it kind of nice. Every now and then there'd be a beautiful vista over farm fields, or certainly in the Northeast, there'd be quite a few views in the Greens and White Mountains. And it's not exactly the same feeling. It's I think a lot of the time you feel as though it looks the same every day, but there is always something different to be seen and always something unique about each state. I started in March. And so the weather was cold, and I would sometimes wake up and my water would be frozen and I would just be shivering, and I didn't really know much about keeping warm. And then as you walk north with spring and summer, and it turned into like a super hot, blazing, humid heat that you had to deal with. And then once you finish towards the end, you sort of get back to that damp, chilly weather in the fall, and you're racing to make it to Mount Katahdin before the snows close the mountain. Food and water is easy to come by on the AT. You don't have to plan too hard. There's always going to be a trail town close by, so you can go shopping at a grocery store. The water was delicious and just so, so nice to come upon, an underground spring that tastes like the best water you've ever tasted in your life. And that is not the case with the trails out west, especially in the desert. Some of the wildlife I saw on that trail were bears, snakes, coyotes, fox, martins, hawks, owls, deer, moose, and a dreaded whippoorwill. A whippoorwill is a bird that sings all night long. Whippoorwill, 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 whippoorwill. And it's quite annoying. This is how I navigated on the AT. I didn't do too much work. I had a map and I had a guidebook that told me where everything was going to be. And then I just walked down the trail following these white lines painted on the trees. When you see one, it means you're on the trail. Everything's good. When you see two directly above one another, you know that there's going to be a change of direction soon. And when you see two with an offset, so one, the top one tells you the way you're going to turn. So this one would be a left-hand turn is coming up soon. If it was the other way around and it was on this side of the tree, then you would know a right-hand turn was coming soon. And when there were no trees and you were in the rocks, which is common in Pennsylvania and in the White Mountains, they would sometimes paint them on the rocks. And then the trails that were on the side were called blue blazes. So any other side trail accessing the AT would have a blue stripe. And so it was really quite easy to navigate. I didn't need to worry about which way I was going, and I didn't really often feel lost. I felt like I knew where I was almost all the time. These are some photos I took with a disposable camera, because in 2001 and 2003, there were no digital cameras, or at least I did not have one. And I had no cell phone, I had no GPS, I had no devices at all, except for my Sony Walkman, which I'll show you in the next picture. But this is a picture of me, super, super huge pack. Can you see my cursor pointing to this little spot where my backpack clearly doesn't fit? This was a backpack that was ill-fitting and hurt me so much because it was sized much too large for me. And I didn't even know how to size a backpack. So I struggled through until I was able to get a new pack. This pack was like 50 pounds and my friend's pack was 55 pounds. That's T-Bird. And my trail name ended up being Nemo. When you start the trail, either someone gives you a name or you take a name, but everyone sort of goes by a fake name on the trail and it sort of sticks with you. This is sometimes what it would look like when we would try to find a place to camp at night. It would be so busy and every flat place would have a tent on it. You'd have to just find a spot. And this was one day when we camped high up on a bald, which is a mountain in the south that has no trees and mostly a pasture. There's my Sony Walkman with my AA battery playing the radio. That was my entertainment if I ever needed any. This is me with some wild ponies in Grayson Highlands. They live on the trail and they're quite friendly and they come right up to you. I always hiked with a lot of food. As you can tell, my pack was huge and a lot of the times it was like this huge bag of food. I think because I'm Italian and I was afraid I might run out. This is a place called McAfee Knob, and I can't believe now looking at that I was just sitting there, but I apparently was much braver than I am now, because now I think I would feel weird sitting on a ledge like that. And this is me with a tool called a Pulaski. A Pulaski is a tool used for grubbing out a trail. So this trail was built by removing the duff off of the forest floor, cutting through roots and trying to make it somewhat flat. And it took 40 people 2 days to make 2 miles of trail that day. We had to reroute the trail around a section that was no longer accessible. And so I did some volunteering that on the trail, and it felt great. And that's something I'd like to do in the future as well. This is me at the end. I made it to Mount Katahdin. I so didn't want it to end. All I could say was that I just was a different person. I was much more free. I was independent. I was flexible, aware of my surroundings. And when I got back to real life, I had a lot of sensory overload. There were bells and buzzes and beeps and rules, and people smelled like perfume, and I didn't know quite what to do with myself. I was kind of like a wild animal at that point, and I sort of have remained so ever since. I was so strong though at the end of that trail. I think the AT was the one that I felt the strongest. My muscles were like super duper buff. It was so much climbing, and it was so strenuous, and it was quite hard on my body. But I was at that time probably in the best shape of my life. So then I'm done now, and I'm wondering what's next. And someone tells me about this trail called the Pacific Crest Trail. And I think, I'll just work a few more years and save up. And so that's what I did. I bought this book called The Yogi Guide, and I read it in 3 nights, and it had all the information I needed to hike this other trail on the West Coast. I had never been to California, Oregon, or Washington before. I had never been in a desert. I had never traveled in snowy peaks with an ice axe before. I had never forded a river. I'd never been in a hot spring. There were a lot of cool firsts for me on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's a little bit like once I started, I just couldn't stop. I just wanted to see my country on foot. I wanted to see what there was to see while my body was still young and could take me there. I worked on a farm, on an organic vegetable farm, and kind of saved up my money. And then I cashed in a gold coin I got when I was little to help me pay for some more gear, and I was off again. I used mostly the same gear, but a slightly bigger backpack because I had to carry so much extra water in the desert. And I had a couple new things as well that I had on this trail, a new tent that I liked a lot. But most of the gear I already had. It's kind of expensive to start off through hiking and backpacking, but once you have it, it should last a long time. So I started the trail with the same friend, T-Bird, that I hiked the Georgia to Virginia section on the AT with. And then the rest of the trail, I was with my dear friend Shira. And I hiked about 1,000 miles with my future husband, Pouch, who was from England. Of course, I didn't know it at the time, but we would end up married and together, and we still are together. So this was the trail that I thought was going to be more challenging, and it was. It takes about 4 to 6 months to hike this one, but a little bit larger mileage a day, 20 to 30 miles a day. It has mountains that are a little bit taller for sure. The highest is Forester Pass at 13,153 feet, but there's also a side trail that you can take to Mount Whitney, which is 14,500 feet, and that's the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states. And I was able to hike that. And then I was able to also go down to Curry Village in Yosemite, and that means that by hiking that section, I completed the John Muir Trail as well, which is probably one of the most fantastical, amazing trails you can hike if you ever have time. And so that little section right there was remind me to tell you the story about my bear attack later. That was where we had a bear incident. And there's not so many people hiking the trail that year with me. When I hiked in 2006, there were only about 300 people to try it, but it's very different now. Now it's just like the Appalachian Trail, and there's something close to 4,000 permits issued per year for hiking that trail. And it's a much more wilderness-based trail, so there's less town access, less roads, less ways in and out. Super cool. So there's a bunch of desert sections, pretty difficult. to carry all the water that you need to carry. It's very heavy, and water is super, super brutally heavy. And so that was one of the challenges, going through the Anza Borrego and Mojave, parts of the Mojave Desert. But the terrain is much more gentle and gradual. Um, Again, the food and water, you do have to deliver yourself some mailboxes full of food. So I would go to the post office and send myself a package, general delivery, and then I would pick it up at the post office, wherever I was, and it would have some gear and some food in it. And that was super, super good to have some treats from home. And my mom would always slip a few things in there. And my mom was my base camp. She would send me those boxes and make sure that everything was there when I needed it. Thank you, Mom. I saw rattlesnakes and sidewinders, scorpions, lizards, bears, badgers, fox, coyotes, mountain goats, cougars, marmots, and pikas. Lots of cool things. Here are some photos from the Pacific Crest Trail. That's the terminus at the Mexican border. There's me licking a cactus. There's some old shoes and some new shoes. I went through about 15 pairs of shoes to hike the Triple Crown. That is me going through a burned area. Super duper common for the trail to burn down there. This is in the Sierra Nevada through the middle part of California. I had to cross a lot of rivers that were very, very fast moving and very cold. And I had to hike over a lot of snow. So we did often use our ice axes. That cool little thing right on top of my backpack is a little solar panel. This is my husband, Pouch. He and I hiked about 1,000 miles together. And this is me at the northern border in Canada. It was such a bittersweet day. Again, I knew that I wasn't done because I knew there was one more trail. The Continental Divide Trail was the first date with my husband, Pouch. It goes through New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. And there are very few people to hike that each year, maybe about 30 tops. But you get to choose your own trail. And on this particular journey, I did the most navigating that I'd ever had to do. And you had to add a little bit of time every day to your schedule because it took so long to do the navigating. I had to read a guidebook in reverse, use a GPS and maps every day, and my compass. My route was probably about 2,670 miles, and it took me about five months at about 18 to 25 miles a day. My tallest mountain was in Colorado at Gray's Peak at 14,278 feet. And right now, about 300 people try it a year. And it's a super, super cool journey because there is no trail in a lot of spots. You'll find that there are like whole sections missing and whole sections that you're walking between places. Lots of really neat geology, lots of volcanoes. I walked through Mount St. Helens ash. I walked through trails made of obsidian, which is what's made when lava cools very quickly. I got in my first real hot spring. And this trail is also graded for hikers as well, and horses, I mean, so it's a little bit more gentle. And this trail and the Pacific Crest Trail is almost all above tree line. You can see for miles and miles almost every day. Super cool. On this trail, the water was an issue. It is scarce often in the desert, and we did rely on trail angels to cache water in some of the desert. And we had to do a lot of long carries of food, 7 days of food maybe. On this trail, I saw grizzly bears, I saw a badger, I saw marmots, moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goats. That was something new for me. And I did see some grizzly bears, but I didn't get a picture, unfortunately, because I was pretty focused on not getting in trouble with them. This is New Mexico and Colorado. This is avalanche fallout that we had to walk through from the winter. This is me holding a can of bear spray. There are no bears in that section, but the next section had bears, and I had sent my can of bear pepper spray to protect myself. This is my favorite place in the country, the Wind River Range. This is a place called Titcomb Basin. These are some of my pals that I was hiking with. I ended up being the only girl for probably the bulk of the end. And this is Montana. I followed these toothpicks in the dirt a lot. That would be it. That would be the trail. It would just be toothpick to toothpick. This is Yellowstone, one of the hot pools. And this is Glacier National Park. And here I am at the end, finishing my Triple Crown. I had a lot of good gear, and my gear lasted, and I still have the same gear, actually. Most of the gear is still kicking. You need a backpack, a sleeping pad, a sleeping bag, trail shoes. I prefer to hike in a hiking skirt. 3 layers for on top, some rain gear, trekking poles, which help save your ankles and knees a lot, a stove and a pot, about 2 pounds of food per day, maps and data books and town info, so you know where you are when you're in town, a headlamp, your ditties or toiletries, and a first aid kit. So that's pretty much what I carried on my back for many, many, many miles. Here's some of my favorite wildlife. I put this together for Anna Yarsevich, who said, you better show us the animals. This is a Gila monster, which is pretty cool, very rare to see. This is a little horny toad lizard. That is a grizzly bear paw print. That's about the size of my foot. This is a cougar paw print, which I know I was being tracked by a cougar at some point. You can't see this, but there's little white dots right here. Those are mountain goats. That's a rattlesnake, a moose. That's a banana slug. And these are bighorn sheep. So you've heard about all the other trails that I've hiked. Just can't stop exploring. And now I guess I would like to see if anybody has any questions. If you need some ideas, I put a few up there because I'm sure you are probably going to ask me some of these.
Oh, that was incredible, Aaren. I have a lot of questions, but of course I'll let the girls go first. That was so cool. Congratulations. First of all, that's just such a huge accomplishment to have done that, and at such a young age, and to know that you had to keep taking little breaks every now and then, right? To raise enough money and sell a gold coin from your childhood to be able to experience such great hiking. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you very much.
I think the first hand up was Emma and Liddy. You had a question.
Why did you decide to look at cactus?
I really got as close as I could, but I didn't actually touch it. But doesn't it look like I am? It was a trick. It was really like a trick, because I definitely didn't want to really lick a cactus. That would not be good.
Good question.
That is a good one.
Thank you.
Anna.
Which one of the trails that you did is the safest?
Oh, it's hard to say. If you're afraid of people or you're afraid of animals, it depends on what you're afraid of. I was more afraid of people. And so I felt the closer I was to the big cities, the more scared I felt. And then there was this one spot on the Appalachian Trail where I was very close to New York City, and I just didn't feel right there. I felt like when I slept at night, because I was by myself, a couple nights there, I felt like I wanted to be hidden from the trail. Like I didn't want anyone to know that I was there alone. The rest of the time, I never felt nervous. I actually felt like I was pretty safe, and everyone was around me was really relatively good. And I felt like all the animals weren't out to get me. We call them the stick breakers. So at night, when you hear a little stick breaking, you think, oh, that. And then after a while, you start to learn all the sounds and all the noises of the animals at night. And you start to learn that none of them are really out to get you. Even the rattlesnakes, they really are not out to get you. So I would say the safest trail, I felt the safest, probably in parts of the AT. And then the rest of the time after I got some experience, I really enjoyed the Pacific Crest Trail.
Good question, Anna. Carmen and Talia, or Carmen, you have a question. You just need to unmute yourself, kiddo. There you go.
Hi, Carmen.
Hi. What do you think what was your favorite town that you visited?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I had a town, well, we had a town stop that was absolutely out of the ordinary, because when we were in this section of trail on the Continental Divide Trail, and it was just me and Pouch, my husband, and we had just gotten through a section of all snow travel, and the snow was what is called rotten, so it was very soft, and our bodies were sinking into it with no snowshoes, and we were hardly able to make like 10 miles a day, and we were running out of food and trying to get to this pass in Colorado. And so when we got to the pass, we felt so exhausted, and we felt like we really needed something amazing to help our bodies refuel and to regain some strength. We were very tired and weak. And we hitchhiked down into this town called Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And when we were there, we stayed with a man whose name is Neen. And he hiked the Triple Crown 3 times. He's a triple. And I had I didn't even know there was such a thing as a triple. But ever since then, there actually are a couple other people who hiked all 3 trails 3 times. And so this guy knew everything about the trail, and he knew what we needed. And he worked at the Hot Springs Resort, and he gave us a free pass to go into the Hot Springs Resort in Pagosa Springs. And we stayed there all day, and we went from one pool to the next, to the next, to the next. And then we would jump in the ice cold river, and then we'd go to another hot pool, and we stayed in the pools all day, and we ate and ate and ate, and we fattened ourselves back up again, rested our muscles, and we were ready to go again. But at that time, I thought that was like the best place ever.
That's great. I love those associations. Talia.
Can you tell us about how you got attacked by a bear?
I was gonna ask that too.
I brought my canister so I could show you. You guys probably have seen these before, but this is called a bear canister. When you go into places like Yosemite, you need to have one of these, and all of your food needs to fit in it. And if all of your food doesn't fit in it, then you're leaving that food, basically at risk, and you're at risk of being sniffed out and attacked. So we knew that we are there right at the snow melt when the bears would be coming out of hibernation. And we knew that there were problem bears in Yosemite Valley. And we were hiking away from the Pacific Crest Trail and down to Yosemite Valley, where all the people go and park their cars and visit the national park. And I was with my friend Shira and another man named Weather Carrot. And we were just finishing our dinner, and we had put all of our food, as we should, in our bear canister. And I was knitting, and my friend Shira was reading. And then we looked up, and we saw a giant mother bear charging us. And she was blonde. She wasn't brown. She had like almost like yellowish hair. And I said, Shira! And Shira jumped back toward me, and the bear grabbed her backpack and dragged it off. And in her pocket of her backpack, she had left a big, gigantic bag of raisins and chocolate and peanuts. And she forgot about it. She forgot about putting it in there. And so the bear had her backpack, so we couldn't leave. We couldn't pack up to leave. But we had a fire, and the fire was so big and bright, and there was so much downed wood from the storms in the winter that we just kept putting more sticks on the fire. And every time she would come toward us, we would stand behind the fire and put more sticks on the fire and scream at her. And we were banging our pots and pans and trying to get her to go away. And then 2 little bear cubs come marching up, and they wanted the gorp too. And so they were all eating the bag of gorp, and then every now and then she would kind of charge us to let us know to stay away from the babies. And we were furiously packing up all of our stuff, but Shira couldn't because her backpack was way over by the bears. And so we were just in a quandary about what to do. And I tiptoed ever so very, 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 very risky, but I tiptoed toward the bears while they were eating the gorp. And I grabbed the backpack, which had been like left kind of like, now that they had the gorp, they left the backpack alone. And I grabbed the backpack and I just like gently tugged it back towards where we were. And she threw all of her stuff in it and we ran. And when we ran like down the trail for like 2 miles until we couldn't run anymore. And then we stopped and we kind of tried to find a place way away from the trail to sleep, but we didn't. I don't think anybody slept that night. And then in the morning, we had to report it to the ranger, and the ranger said, which is what I've always been afraid of, that a fed bear is a dead bear, because once a bear gets a taste for human food, they'll continue to attack humans for their food. And once a bear has a bad history of that, they sometimes have to kill the bear, or they have to capture the bear and move it to another place. And so we always felt so bad about those 2 bear cubs and that mom, because we knew that we were that was like maybe the end of their fun life in Yosemite Valley. But yeah, that was my scariest. I think that was my scariest moment on the trails for sure.
That was a close call, I'd say. That counts. Gosh, that is impressive. Well done to hold your own there in the presence of the bears. Gosh. Zoe had a question, but she wants me to ask it, which is what was your hardest hike that you did of the 3, which felt the hardest? Was that your question?
I think physically hardest was probably the Appalachian Trail. I was new to hiking and I was learning the tricks of the trade, and I was learning how to pace myself. And I also had a humongous backpack that was with way too much stuff in it. And I had to climb these ridiculous climbs that were just straight up all the time. And mentally, my hardest one was the Continental Divide Trail. We often had to experience with lots and lots of different types of weather, lots of different terrain. We were navigating all the time, trying not to get lost in the middle of nowhere. And there were always, no matter what, there were always things that were wearing on us, so wearing us down. I think we were tired because we had just hiked the Pacific Crest Trail the year before. And I think we were also, it wasn't easy. It wasn't social either. There was like nobody out there. So it was just you and a dirt road a lot of the time. So I think that one was the hardest for me mentally, being a social person and being, I like my wilderness and I like my quiet, but I loved being around people too.
Emma and Liddy, did you have another question, or is that from a previous? No? Okay.
Oh,
You don't have one? Okay. Oh, Anna has another question. Go for it, Anna.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but who is the youngest person that's ever done it? Like,
I don't believe there's a triple crowner yet. I'm not sure if it's like maybe like an 18-year-old or something for the Triple Crown, but I know the youngest Appalachian Trail hiker, I think, is 6.
Whoa, a through hiker?
There's somebody trying to be a Triple Crowner named Buddy Backpacker. You can look him up. He will be the youngest when he finishes, but I don't think he's finished yet. But if you check him out, he lives in my sister's town in Colorado. My sister is actually a pro downhill mountain biker, or was at some point, and she lives in Gunnison. And she's actually she's met the family up there in Crested Butte. They live in Crested Butte. And the kid's name is Buddy Backpacker. And he hiked the AT when he was 5, the PCT when he was 6. And then he kind of I think he had to hike a couple sections of the CDT. And I don't know that he's finished yet.
Wow, that's young. Cameron, you had a question. Do you want me to ask your question, or would you like to unmute yourself? I'll ask the question. Yeah. So Cameron's question was, what was your favorite snack, and what snack will you never eat again? I feel like maybe the gorp you'll never eat again because of those bears, but maybe I'm wrong.
At the time, I think I probably tried every single power bar or Cliff Bar or, protein bar there was, and none of them were very good. But every now and then, I would go through like a Snickers phase. So Snickers to me was like, I know this is not good for my body. I know that but I feel like I deserve it and I'm going to have it. Like, it was like a treat. It was like, this isn't really good food for you, but it's really good for your morale when you're down and you have like one giant king size Snickers.
Yeah, and if you're gonna do this long 4 to 6 month hike, like you need to have those morale boosters every once in a while,
And
right?
you need to have a lot of calories, like really need to
Yeah.
eat a lot of calories a day. And then the thing that I had the most trouble with, so, lunch was hard. Lunch was really hard for me until I've learned some tricks now. Now I do a lot of cold soaking where you make a meal by adding water and letting it sit for like a couple hours. But back then I would say I could never eat tuna again. There was a time that I ate tuna like twice a week, um and it was like dry and it never had anything good in it. I would steal condiments from like a gas station, like, I would steal relishes and like, mayonnaise and stuff, but it didn't really matter. After a while, I could hardly eat that. And a lot of people say they can't eat peanut butter afterwards. Or they can never eat a Cliff Bar again, a power bar or a Cliff Bar. I will never eat a power bar ever again.
I'd forgotten about power bars, but that was
like glue. It's like dried glue. I can't eat those. No.
I remember my mom used to wrap them on the top tube of her bike bar, or the top tube of the bike when she was doing her Ironmans, and it would just stick to the top tube. It's like, that can't be good for your system.
No, and I feel like the older I've gotten, the more healthy I've been eating when I'm on the trail. And I know a lot of tricks of how to make things taste good now. And I dehydrate a lot of my own meals and,
Oh, wow.
and stuff like that. And at some point, I even made my own power bars with my mom. My mom is a chef and she helped me make my own little line of like, super yummy protein bars.
Oh, that's very cool. And do you hike now quite a bit with your son, and you do day trips mostly, or do you do overnights?
Mostly day trips with him. We're doing the Adirondack Fire Tower Challenge.
Nice.
So
Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think most of these kids are in this area, so that would be great to hear about.
So it's a pretty cool book. You can buy the guidebook. It's called Views from On High. And once you start, you kind of want to do them all because they're so interesting. Some of them are short, some of them are longer hikes. Some of the towers are tall and some are not as tall. Some of the towers are not, you're not allowed to go into them, and some you can go right up to the top. But there's like 24 hikes total that you have to do to get a patch that says you've hiked all the fire towers in New York State. And there's some in the Catskills as well. So I think it's like 25. You have to do 18 out of 25 in the Adirondacks, and then you have to do 5 in the Catskills in order to do it. And it's really good. Cool. It's a good goal for a family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of them are quite a distance away. Some of them are about a 3-hour drive north. So that's tricky, but.
Yeah. Girls, can you raise your hands on your videos if you've hiked one of those fire tower trails before? Maybe is it Hadley? Is that one of them?
Hadley is one, and Spruce.
Yeah, Spruce.
The ones that are closest.
Oh, look at all those hands.
And there's a really nice one called Black Mountain in Lake George area. That's a really good one.
Oh, that's great.
Very cool.
Nice job, girls. Who was it? Courtney had a question, which is, what are your favorite memories hiking with your dad when you were little? And how did he help you keep going when you were tired and to keep things fun?
My dad and I, when we would hike, would often, now that I think back to it, like, it's amazing. I actually enjoyed hiking because I think I recall a couple times being lost and like wandering around in the forest with my dad in the mist.
Exciting anyway.
One of my favorites is trying to go up Mount Marcy, and I had jeans on, and I had a cotton sweatshirt with dancing, exercising bears on it. And I had a cotton hat that said awesome on it.
So wait a second, Mount Marcy meaning the highest of the 46 peaks, right, girls? The highest of all of the 46 peaks.
That was my first mountain. That was my first hike.
Oh.
And so, yeah, are you cold? Let me give you this cotton bandana. And I was still cold. So he was like, hold on, let me put the bags on your feet. So, I had like plastic bags to put on my socks inside my boots to keep my feet warm. And then the wind was whipping. We were getting above tree line. And I think he had given me like all of his clothing. I had like huge, big, long, giant man's shirt on. And we didn't make it that day. That was my first experience with him, was not making it to the top and turning around to stay safe, which is a really important thing for everyone to learn. And it's super, super hard sometimes when you can see the summit, but always better to come back another day. It'll be there. It'll be there another day.
It's a really good lesson. Yeah.
So that would be, my favorite memories, I think, were just also seeing him as preparing for his winter trips and knowing I couldn't go yet. I knew there was like something about winter hiking, but I knew I wasn't ready yet. And seeing all that gear, like just really getting into, when I would look at all his gear and get so excited about like, well, what's that thing for,
So when did you do the winter 46ers? Was that recently?
I've been slowly picking away at those for the past 10 years. And last year I put in a concerted effort to try to finish. So I
Nice.
finished in March of last year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And maybe you could show us, so you did the Triple Crown, and was there a medal that you received? Was there, what is the prize that you received?
So now I think they don't get this exact same thing. They get something similar, but this was the plaque that I got.
Oh, it's so cool.
And yeah, it's kind of cool. There's actually something called the American Long Distance Hikers Association, and they are the people that confer the award and kind of keep track of who has done what. And it's all on the honor system. So they don't follow you around and make sure that you've hiked every single mile. They just trust that if you say you did, you did. And so then you kind of fill out some paperwork and turn it in. And that's how you would get a plaque after doing something like that. And then they have really cool annual meetings where they talk about long distance backpacking. They talk about long distance hiking. They talk about some of the issues that you might face navigating, and water purification, some of the gear that you'll need. There's a lot of good ways to learn about it before you go out now.
That's good to hear. Anna, you had a question, and then we'll finish up and kind of think about, girls, what Aaren asked us at the very beginning about what you think about hiking as a sport, and we'll finish up with that discussion. Go ahead, Anna.
What food were you most excited to eat when you'd finished the trails?
It was always something salty, and it was always a chip, like something in the chip family, the chip food group. It would be like either like a Frito or a Dorito or a tortilla chip or something that was like that had a lot of flavor and that was very salty. That would be the first thing that I would try to eat when I got done. And I would eat quite a lot. Like I remember now moving back home to my mom's house after one of the trails. She was like, the refrigerator is empty. What are you guys doing? We were like, well, we're just hungry. We were eating like 6,000 calories a day or something crazy.
Gosh, that's a lot. That's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Aaren. I thought it'd be really fun. I loved how you posed that question at the beginning of the conversation, and I wonder, girls, if you had any thoughts while you were listening to Aaren about what you thought about hiking as a sport and sports in general. Today is International Women in Sports Day, and maybe we can consider that conversation about what makes a sport in your mind, and whether you think hiking is one of those sports. Emma and Liddy.
I think hiking is a sport because anything that you do that's active and outside, I think is a sport.
I love that.
That's a good definition.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any ideas?
Anna?
Anything that like takes training or endurance, maybe?
Very good.
I feel like that's what makes it. Like if I was just going out for a walk, it wouldn't necessarily be a sport. Walking wouldn't necessarily be a sport. But if I was trying to achieve a goal that involved a lot of endurance and some skill, like a level of skill that I had to master over time.
Yeah, some sort of preparation involved in getting there to that goal. Yeah. Ruby.
I think like acting is a sport. So I think if it's a sport, you need skills to do a sport.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Like because almost everybody can walk.
Right.
So I wouldn't call that a sport.
But anything that involves some sort of technical ability or yeah, that's a good thought. Anybody else? Oh, Zoe says, I think it's because it's outside and in the woods that it should be considered a sport. Nice. Talia, you had your, yeah, go ahead, Talia.
If it like makes you stronger and like is fun to do, then it's a sport.
I love it. Yeah. I love how none of your answers so far have involved the competition side of things. Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter if it's competitive or not, or whether you're in a race or whether you want to win it. It's being outside, it's getting better at something, it's preparing your body to be able to accomplish something. And all of those are really important in the world of sport. And hiking includes all of those things, right? The preparation and the mental preparation too, right? Just like mountain biking, for you to be able to gather the courage to get up and over one of these logs, or to go down a whoop-de-doo that you wouldn't have necessarily done before. Like that takes mental preparation too, and a bit of what's it called? Visualization, I suppose, in being able to prepare yourself for those physical challenges of the sport. And I'm sure Aaren has that as well in her hiking. And she knew after she had done one of those trails what it might entail to do another, but then she could then further prepare herself for the next set of hikes that she was doing as well. So that's all part of sport. I agree. Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else have any input? Oh, that was such a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. Oh, Anna had something to say. Did you want to add something, Anna?
What's another question? Is there like a separate award that you get for like hiking the like separate trails?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Each one, you would get a certificate for each one as well.
Oh, cool.
For almost all of them. And there's so many. If you go onto the website for the American Long Distance Hiking Association, it talks about all the long distance trails in America. And there's like, I don't know, 200 of them or something.
Oh, wow. And are the 46ers, if you do it as a through hike, is that considered one of those?
I think that one would not be, because you can choose your
distance.
own trail in that instance.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The actual trail that you're on.
Gotcha.
You're on separate trails that you're linking together.
Yeah.
And there are people that are racing right now. They're doing something called the fastest known times, or FKTs. So there are hikers who are trying to one up one another by doing it faster and faster and faster. Some of my heroes are the women that have crushed the records on the AT. Jennifer Farr Davis and a woman named Heather Anderson. They've both written amazing books that are so inspirational about their grueling hikes, where they hiked 50 miles a day and did the trail in like 45 or 50 days. So
that's incredible.
There are people that are trying to race the clock.
Yeah, so we just 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you saw, we had Katie Rhodes and Bethany Gerritsen on, and so they achieved
I have not met them, but I've been following them for a while, rooting them on.
Yeah, so I think they're hoping to do a winter FKT as well at some point. I think they're kind of training for that, but the summer FKT was quite an accomplishment, right? I guess it was was it August that they achieved that?
Yes.
So that was really exciting. So yeah, it was interesting to hear. It's very different, right? You have to be so lightweight when you're preparing for that. The gear is very different, of course, and it's just a different experience, I'm sure, going fast versus just finishing it and having a longer distance.
It's very grueling on the sinews.
Yeah.
The old tendons.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Aaren. It was really inspirational to hear about the Triple Crown hike in particular, and that you were able to hike all those miles. 8,000, over 8,000 miles is just an incredible feat. And so thank you for sharing those stories. We really appreciate having you here. And girls, thank you for joining again. Next week we have Emma White, who is a professional cyclocross and track cycling superstar. She'll be going to the Olympics this summer in Tokyo for track cycling. And she's actually local-ish. I think she's originally from the Glens Falls area. So she races for Rally Cycling and the USA Cycling team. And she won a gold medal at the World Championships this past year in Germany. So that'll be a fun one.
So lucky.
I know, right? It's such a nice variety of guests that we've had. It's just been a blast. So thank you again, Aaren. I really appreciate it. And I hope all of you girls enjoyed the conversation, and I'll have it up on the recording on YouTube in the next couple days. Thank you again. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Aaren. Bye.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, cuties.
Bye.